This story happened a while ago, but it still messes with my mind. A side note, I live in a quiet countryside village where there's usually nothing happening. I'm an 18-year-old girl who can easily walk around my hometown alone without ever being scared because it's really safe here. There's basically no crime. So, as usual, me and my dog went for a walk one evening. It was nice weather outside, so I decided to go to a nearby field. I usually let my dog off of her leash there so that it was fun for the both of us. She's a nice dog and always comes when I call for her. We get to the field and everything's going really well and nothing seems off. Except that I have this kind of odd feeling in my gut that I never usually have. The last time that I did, I was 8 years old and we were driving at night with my family. I told them how I felt and they decided to slow down because I was oddly serious at that moment. A minute after I said it, a deer came running out of nowhere and we would have crashed into it if we had been going the same speed as a minute before. We were all shocked and my mom thanked me. I still remember it like it was yesterday. However, in the field 10 years later, I had that same gut feeling. Whatever, I thought, and I kept going, completely ignoring it. We roll around the fields and a nearby forest until the sunset starts to go down. I put my dog back on her leash and decide to leave from one of the tiny pathways that go through a small forest. It's the quickest way to get back home. It's not a popular way, but it is quick. As I'm walking along that path, I suddenly spot a silhouette in the end of the road, just before the forest begins. I think nothing of it at that point and just keep walking, but after just a little while I have a strong gut feeling and I stare at the silhouette. I look for a while and that's when I notice that the silhouette is staring at me without moving. I just think that maybe they were waiting for someone because at first, the silhouette looked like a child's. But as I got closer, I noticed that it wasn't a child, but a grown man instead, who looked to be struggling while attempting to ride a children's bicycle. It was a blue and green boy's bicycle. His legs were way too long for it and his whole body looked like he was forcing himself to ride it. It was a really unsettling sight. But still, my idiot self didn't want to turn around and have a couple of kilometers of wasted time. And even though it was creepy looking at it, I still thought, hey, maybe he's waiting for somebody that's coming from my way. But every step that I took, he followed me with an intense expression. I'm only like 20 meters away from him when he starts to do these weird jumps on his bike, smiling the ugliest and most unsettling smile that I had ever seen, just staring at me with wide eyes. He kind of looks like he was expecting something and is so excited about it that he needs to jump. He looked like he had to be in his 50s or something, with very long and thin legs and arms, bald and that creepy unsettling smile. That's when my alarm rings went off. I glanced behind me and nobody was there, just me, an 18-year-old small girl with her fluffy, definitely not a guard dog. I did a 360 turn and started to jog from where I came, just in case. I glanced at him and sighed in relief when I noticed that he wasn't following me anymore. I thought that maybe he wasn't waiting for me after all, and I called myself a stupid and a scaredy cat. Oh, I was so wrong. My adrenaline started to slow down again as I was in the middle of the fields, and I still saw no sign of him following me. I let my dog off her leash again and she started to run around. I'm nearly at the end of the field. I only have a kilometer or so to the forest part before I get to my home after the field part. And that's when my dog spots a rabbit or a deer or some interesting thing and flies towards it. I panic because she had never done that before and I yell for her. I yell plenty of times for her loudly and finally she comes back. I'm relieved that nothing happened to her, but as I put her back on her leash, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. The freaky bald-looking guy with his long legs is biking towards me. He's not looking at the ground when he bikes, but at me. Freaking out wasn't enough to express my feeling in that moment, I have never seen a human who looked so crazy. More than crazy. What surprised me the most was that he was still biking though through a field. And I can tell you that it's not even an easy field to walk through sometimes. It has muddy ponds that you need to jump over, but that psycho just biked right through them. He was struggling a lot to bike there, but somehow managed to still do it. I didn't wait for another second before I started running. I ran so fast at full speed, and I have asthma, that I saw black and nearly collapsed. My lungs hurt so bad that I thought I was dying, but the adrenaline kept my blood running in my legs too. Once I glanced behind me and he was there, struggling badly to keep up his full speed on the field, with that ugly smile and the way too little bike. After that, I just ran like crazy until I found a house. I hid in their yard without even minding that I was in somebody else's yard. It didn't matter to me in that moment at all. I waited a while with my breathing still stuck in my throat, but he didn't come. I was planning to yell so loudly as I could if he found me, but he never did. At some point, the adrenaline started leaving my system and I left my hiding spot. I ran again until I reached an area which had multiple people in the yard so that I would have some help if I saw him again, but luckily I did not. I typed 911 into my phone, but I couldn't bring myself to call, mostly because I didn't have any proof, and I didn't want my parents to find out because they are overprotecting, so I wouldn't probably leave my house anymore. I still lived with them. I've been paranoid about this incident ever since, and my dog was frightened too. I guess she noticed that something was really off. I swear to God that I will always listen to my gut when it's telling me something from now on. I'm still scared of that man. I've expected to randomly spot him in some area, and I just think about what he could have done to me, and I'll never forget his awful smile. I feel like he's gonna jump on my window one night and do what he wants to me. I feel paranoid and helpless. I'm still thinking about calling the police. A 35-year-old female used to work at a small startup that had a small warehouse in the city. I enjoyed it because it had great benefits, perks, and a pretty easy commute. I just walked a few blocks to the metro line in our city. Usually I worked the day shift, so my walk to the station wasn't too bad. I just encountered a normal city life. On the occasional time that I worked into the night, I usually walked with some coworkers I knew, or then my boyfriend would come and pick me up. If I had to make the walk by myself, I would wear giant headphones to deter catcalls and any other annoyances. I had a doctor's appointment that morning and I was allowed to make up my shift by staying after the day shift crew had left. However, I finished my shift before the rest of the evening crew, which meant that I made the walk by myself that day. It was already dark and the street was pretty much deserted, except for this one really tall, burly dude walking just ahead of me yelling into his phone. I had my headphones on but nothing playing because I still wanted to be aware of my surroundings. The big burly guy sounded angry and didn't turn back to look at me until after he had yelled into the phone. I did my part and now it's up to you to get rid of the body. I don't care what you gotta do, just make it disappear. And then he turned around and stopped walking, looking at me surprised. I quickly stopped to not run into him and give an awkward grimace and smile, acting like I hadn't just heard him say that because I was listening to music. At the next crosswalk, I quickly crossed the street. He just stared, standing in place until I was a block away, and then he turned the corner and disappeared. I don't know if this guy actually knew that I was behind him and said that to scare me because he thought that I was listening into his conversation. I hope. Or he was up to no good. But that was super creepy. I've never walked to the metro when it was dark after that by myself. I either got a ride or had a buddy walk with me.